So I'm delighted to welcome you to this inaugural lecture of the Provost's Distinguished Scholars Lectures. You know, a couple of weeks ago I was saying to the incoming freshmen for this year that college is not simply about going to your classes and going to your labs. College is about ensuring that you have some experiences that complement the classes and the labs and the library to which you will go. And this, for me, is one of those experiences that enriches what happens in our classrooms, what happens in our labs, what happens in the library. It's a way for us to engage beyond the classroom, to complement, to supplement the classroom, and to do it particularly at a time when the community can be part of that engagement. I'm delighted then not only to welcome our members of the York College community of students and faculty and staff, but I'm delighted as well to welcome members of our Greater Jamaica community. We think that it's important to engage the community in helping to broaden the life of the mind of our students. And when we think of ways in which we might do so, we often think it important to reach out people who have been broadening minds beyond New York, beyond the United States for a while. And it's partly because the speaker tonight, the writer tonight, has stood out as a person who has been broadening minds in the arts, in the literature. For a while now, we thought it would be delightful for us to engage this inaugural lecture series with having Edwidge Danticat be part of our community of engagement. Mine is not the task to introduce her. That task will fall to one of our organizers, Professor Mark Schuler. Mine simply is the final task to say thanks to the people who did most of the work to make this happen. Professor Schuler, Fabiola, Anderson, Assistant Provost Henke, supported by people across the college in very many offices who helped to make this happen. Staff of the Performing Arts Center, people in the media and technology, people in marketing, I want to personally thank you for all that you did in preparing for this to happen. I'd like now to introduce to you a member of our public community who has been a strong supporter of what we do at York, who recognizes the value of not only college engagement with college, he supports what we do at the arts, in the arts of the college, but recognizes the importance of college engagement with community. It's my privilege to introduce Councilman Leroy Comrie, who will read a proclamation.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank the Provost, Dr. Griffin, for putting together this lecture series at York College. I think that it's an important building block in making sure that York College becomes the best institution in CUNY. And I say that with the desire and the passion to ensure that whatever we do here as a York family, because I consider myself part of the York family, because I want to make sure that whatever we do as a family here, this institution becomes stronger, that you become an institution that has every major, every classroom, every science lab, every advanced technology that happens with any school in the CUNY system. And not because York College is within my district, but because it's important that we make sure that every CUNY institution is a world-class institution. And I'm privileged as a city council member and as a deputy majority leader to consistently fight to ensure that CUNY gets as much as they need out of the budget and more than they want, and to fight to make sure that whatever happens in the budget, that CUNY consistently stays as part of the major funding that we do, because we have to make sure that our children in New York City have a world-class in education, and CUNY is a major part of that. So that is my strong commitment, and I can tell you that I'm happy to fight to make sure that every CUNY institution gets its primary capital project in the budget and other projects that are important to CUNY. But I'm here today because I heard about this program, and sometimes you can take personal privilege as a council member when you want to meet someone that's world-renowned and they're coming into your community. Clearly the author today and the first lecturer is a person that has gained worldwide status because of her outstanding literary contributions. to New York City and the nation. Whereas though she was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, Edwidge Danticat was raised along with her brother by her aunt and uncle after her parents immigrated to New York City. When she immigrated to Brooklyn at the age of 21 to join her parents, and her Haitian Creole accent became a source of discomfort, she turned to literature for solace. And whereas after she excelled at everything, she graduated from Clara Barton High School in Brooklyn, attended Barnard College, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts in French Literature. Additionally, she earned a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from Brown University. And whereas she published her critically acclaimed first novel, Breath, Eyes, and Memory, in 1994, it went on to become a selection of Oprah's Book Club. This wonderful debut was followed by the equally successful novels Kirik Karak, The Farming of Bones, The Dew Breaker, and her memoir, Brother, I'm Dying. And whereas Edwidge Danticat teaches at NYU and the University of Miami, and has also produced several documentaries about her homeland. She has been the winner of numerous literary awards, including the National Books Critics Circle Award and the American Book Award. And whereas she has also been an outspoken advocate for the humanitarian causes in Haiti and serves as a role model and inspiration to Haitian Americans in New York City and across the diaspora, as well as to literary fans of every background. Now, therefore, be it known that I, Leroy Comrie, Deputy Majority Leader of the City Council, honor Edwidge Danticat for her outstanding service and contributions to the community. I'm proud to present this proclamation to you this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Comrie. Lots of whereases, huh? Well-deserved, all those whereases, Edwidge Danticat. Mine now is the privilege of introducing Dr. Mark Schuler, Assistant Professor in our Department of Social Sciences, who will introduce our featured speaker.
As a member of the African American Resource Center Advisory Committee, and on behalf of the Departments of English, Foreign Language, and Social Sciences, I would like to welcome you all to this event. I can say personally, and I believe I can speak for everyone here, it is truly an honor that we are very excited to welcome our speaker, world-renowned, award-winning Haitian American novelist Edwidge Danticat, to York College. On behalf of the committee, I would like to acknowledge Professors Fabiola Salek and Valerie Anderson. We would like to thank our community co-sponsors. If you are in the room, please stand up and be recognized for your contribution to today's event. Foncosé, Good Taste Catering, Habitat, Haiti Support Project of the Institute of Black World, Haitian Book Center, Haitian Women for Haitian Refugees, the Lambi Fund of Haiti, and Tete Ensemble Productions. It is an honor indeed to have our council member, Comrie, here, and we're very excited for his presence and very happy for his support. As a public university based on research, teaching, vigorous debate, and civic engagement, we always welcome the people entrusted to represent us in City Hall, Assembly, or Congress. Given tomorrow's primary election, let me just for the record clarify that our sharing the stage does not and should not constitute endorsement of any candidate running for office. But we do want you all to vote. So, it is an honor to celebrate Edwidge Danticat. And again, it is truly something that we could welcome such a distinguished literary figure to York College and to Jamaica, Queens. Boat people, HBO, the 4-H risk groups, or simply Haitian. These and many others are the insults that many Haitian Americans have faced with an intense xenophobic reaction, even here in New York City's public schools. That Haiti has a bad image in the public eye is not in question. Ever since former slaves who won freedom on their terms, forever ending slavery and forging an independent, free nation in a sea of plantation slavery, Haiti has been demonized, a whipping post, lest it inspire the end of what the U.S. Southerners called this peculiar institution. As Haitian anthropologist Michel Rolfe-Touillot has argued, the Haitian Revolution was literally unthinkable. Haitians and the Haitians in the diaspora are today still paying for that racism. I have had the fortune to tour the country giving guest lectures on Haiti. Out of 1,200 students whom I polled, only one had a positive first impression of Haiti. This underlies the importance of Ms. Danticat's work. The only time Haiti is recognized is for its richness and culture, in its culture. Danticat is one of the only voices that make it through. And it is such a beautiful, Such a powerful voice with straightforward elegance that captures the realities and vivid imaginings of a proud yet embattled people. Danticat's tearfully human stories break down barriers of culture, of nationality, of race, and of media. Several of Danticat's most poignant and timely works have been published just as they are needed, sharing with an audience of people who have the power to enact positive change for Haitian people, readers of Harper's Weekly, The New Yorker, and the New York Times Magazine. In a way only she can, Danticat brings dignity to the real human drama of Haiti's political crisis, the massacre of Haitians at the hands of a Dominican dictator, the differential treatment of girls, the coup d'etat, racist exclusion, discrimination against Haitian Americans, the mistreatment of migrants in a maximum security prison such as Chrome. And in a way only a novelist, and indeed only Danticat can, she educates the public. She has become a scribe for her generation, using her well-earned acclaim to support other voices, particularly women's voices, and as a citizen take stand on issues that need immediate attention. In the mid-1990s, when people were fleeing the country fearing death at the hands of death squads, triggering an intense anti-Haitian sentiment, Edwidge's powerful Kikrak, a collection of short stories honoring Haiti's still thriving oral history tradition, was published. A series of short stories that detail letters written but never sent from a student activist in exile as he was to be washed away at sea in his attempt to save his life, were strung together by her own coming to grips with herself as a woman, as a Haitian woman, and as a writer. Kikrak brings humanity and pride to a people in struggle, a human face desperately needed as Haitian people fought back tears wrought by prejudice and discrimination. Written when Danticat was still in her 20s, Kikrak was a National Book Award finalist. Among her other works are Breath, Eyes, and Memory, a story about struggles and discrimination by girls andeo, literally outside, cast aside in the provinces. The Farming of Bones is a powerful testimony to the racism and brutality faced by Haitian cane cutters in the Batey in the Dominican Republic. Her recent work centers on the politics of memory, of self-making, self-representation, and reconciliation. Her latest work, 2000 Book Critics Circle Award-winning Brother, I'm Dying, is a powerful piece of nonfiction, an autobiography of the man she came to know as father for much of her youth, who died in captivity in a Homeland Security detention facility in Florida. This courageous book breaks new ground for Danticat, known throughout the Pan-Caribbean and literature circles alike as a first-rate novelist and a scribe for her generation, not only as a Haitian American, but as a black woman. She has, as of my last search, been the subject of no less than 137 dissertations and master's theses. Tonight we have a special treat in that Danticat will be sharing with us new unpublished work. Born in Haiti, Danticat moved to the U.S. when she was 12. Her other books include American Book Award Farming of Bones, After the Dance, and The Dew Breaker. She is also the editor of The Butterfly's Way, Voices from the Haitian Diaspora in the United States, and The Beacon Best of 2000, great writing by men and women of all colors and cultures. Danticat has a degree in French literature from Barnard College, winning the 1995 Woman of Achievement Award, and later an MFA from Brown University. Since completing her master's degree, Danticat has taught creative writing at both New York University and the University of Miami. She has also worked with filmmakers Patricia Benoit and Jonathan Demme on projects of Haitian art and documentaries about Haiti. Her short stories, including New York Day Woman, have appeared in over 25 periodicals and have been anthologized several times. Her work has been translated into numerous other languages, including French, Korean, German, Italian, Spanish, and Swedish. Just a short list of her awards include the 1994 Fiction Award, The Caribbean Writer, 1995 Women Achievement Award, Barnard College, Pushcart Short Story Prize for Between the Pool and the Gardenias, National Book Award nomination for Kikrak, 1996 Best Young American Novelist for Breath, Eyes, and Memory by Granta, Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Grant, 1999 American Book Award for The Farming of Bones, the International Flaiano Prize for Literature, the Super Flaiano Prize for The Farming of Bones, 2005 the Story Prize for The Dew Breaker, 2007 the National Book Critics Circle Award for Brother, I'm Dying, 2008 Dayton Literary Peace Prize for Brother, I'm Dying. Danticat is helping to bring well-deserved honor and respect to the people of Haiti as one of its proudest and most accomplished daughters. Let me close by saying that it is truly an honor for me to introduce Edwidge Danticat. Please join me in giving her the warmest welcome possible.
Perfect story, not perfect in execution, but perfect only in intent. The stories our mothers told, and you know this, they were always too frightening for us. They worried that we would remember too much, but we worry that we will forget. Nights of women with wings of flames who want to draw you out of your bed and make you into a star. A lovely thing to be a star, but stars, they are just too far from us, like New York to Port-au-Prince. Nights of galipot, 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 or three-legged horses riding at full speed to either snatch or rescue children who had lost their way. Lost their way from where, you want to know? From their country, I say. And what of the children who had no way to lose? And what of the children who had no country? Then the three-legged horses wouldn't want them, I say, because what comes too easy nobody wants. What comes too easy does not make legends. Nobody is ever outright handed a pot of gold. We must cross forests, jungles, oceans, unearth the tail end of rainbows. We must vine our hair out of window panes and sleep 100 years. And what if that sleeping beauty never awakens with her secret? That, ma chère, we would call death. In our legends, we are beautiful first. A charmed vision comes to claim us. We go off to the enchanted land. Then we find out that the vision had only borrowed its face. Still, we are not foolish enough to lie 100 years and wait. Even if they say we are zombies, even if they say we have powders that keep the death beneath the ground until they jolt awake. And what was that girl, that sleeping beauty? What was she, if not a zombie? And what was it that gave her freedom from the sleeping sickness, if not the taste of salt on the prince's lips? Let no one tell you that it was breath itself. Everyone knows that it was the salt. It is always the salt that wakes the dead and frightens away the three-legged horses and brings us home. Once, while peddling at a sewing machine under a fan, blowing dust balls into my face in a crowded castle called a sweatshop, I dreamed of telling you a story. Not like the stories that we were told of land invasions and foreign masters, of the Makuts and their timid eyes which they hid behind X-ray glasses. In my childhood, the Makuts were legends, breeders of night soil who came with their knapsacks for children who did not do as they were told. In your childhood, the Makuts were soldiers who were transformed by the fears of a madman whose own parents must have told him to listen in the night for the machetes scraping the palmetto so he might stay awake. A man who may have watched as the Marines had come to our shores, and as if the consternation of our nights were not deformed enough, now there are breeders of night soil to frighten the adults too, gunboats to replace the knapsacks, bullets to replace the machetes, and your grandparents who died in chain gangs chiseling a song with their fist. Tandim, tandim. We cannot sleep another 100 years and wait for them to come and kiss our lips. Their kisses are not always gentle over here. They kiss you with their boots over here. And when you awaken, then what? Kisa, then what? And this is why these stories I dream for you are always more yours than mine. One day there might be time for you to ponder these questions from some office castle or some university tower. Do not forget the three-legged horses. Do not forget the night women and their wings. Do not forget the children's lost to the night stars. Do not ever forget those we have left behind. Mothers who, even as they are standing over them, are still carving stories into their children's dreams, stories that they might never be able to tell them, stories that they might be ashamed to tell anyone, stories that one day they will need interpreters for, stories that you will acknowledge at last once you read them in a book. An ancient story, 100 years ancient, of a French general, once master of the colony, who gave a massive ball for all the colored women in the capital whose man had been called away. It was the first ball that anyone knew where so many colored women came, curious by the general's sudden interest in their joy. At midnight, the dancing stops, and the general comes, and the soldiers, dressed in cassock, part a velvet curtain and chant a mass for the dead. Behind the red velvet curtain are rows and rows of coffins, and the French general names them each one by one to tell the woman, "Regarde, you thought you had been dancing when really you were dancing all this time with your dead men." Perhaps we have all been in the coffins with these dead men, and in the silencing dusk with their women, sleeping away our 100 years of shame, waiting, waiting for the salt. Once, while cradling someone else's child in my arms, standing at a kitchen stove, stirring a soup for the child's hunger, I dreamed of telling you a story that rains with salt. I am telling you to open your mouth, open your mouth, open your mouth, and catch as much of this salt as you can. The salt sizzles on your tongue, and suddenly you understand why so many of us are Lord Bordelot, and why this is not the only water that we have ever crossed, but not the truly endless waters, but just the tiny sea. And this is not the first or last sea, nor the only sea that we have ever crossed, and why in the mirror you see your face, and in the night you hear my voice, drowning out the vacant stars, drowning out the galipot, 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 drowning out the machetes and gunboats, drowning out your tears. And the story I like to tell you best is of a mother who every day when she came home from the castle factory would stand outside your bedroom fortress and sing you a simple song. In observing this one day, a devil waited until she was gone and came to your doorstep and tried to imitate the song. At first the voice was too low, and you knew and did not come. But when the mother sang, you came. When the devil came again with a voice that was too high, you knew and did not come. But when the mother sang, you came. Saint Rose de Lima, you say, please pray for us, because now I am frightened that you will no longer know your mother's voice. And this is why I try to carve all these stories into your dreams, so that you will not be deceived by birds and wolves who want to take you into the night. And this is why I try to carve all these stories into your dreams, so that not only will you always remember the sound of my voice, but yours as well. At least once each night before I put my head to rest, I dream of telling you a story. I tell you this story, not certain if you will even know how to discern my voice, if you will stay silent, or if you will sing it back to me. But I have no choice but to tell you these stories. I have no choice because it is all I know. It is all I have. The second piece I'll read is from The Farming of Bones. And The Farming of Bones is it's a different kind of storytelling that I tried to do in my writing, which is it's testimony. And it's a story of cane workers who were massacred in the Dominican Republic. They were ordered by the Trujillo, who was president of the Dominican Republic at that time. And the book itself, it's a love story, but it's a love story of storytelling, and that from the beginning, the Amabel, who's the main character, is struggling to tell her story of survival, but also of Sebastian's absence, who is her lover. And so the book is broken into several parts, and Amabel Desir tells her part, and this part is about testimony. And one of the things that Rita Dove wrote a poem about this massacre, where she has a line, in the lines from there's a parrot imitating spring. We lie down screaming as rain punches through, and we come up green. We cannot speak an R. The general remembers the tiny green sprigs men of his village wore to honor the birth of a son. He will order many this time to be killed for a single beautiful word. And that single beautiful word was the word perejil in Spanish. In Creole, it's pesi. In English, it's parsley. And it was a marker during this massacre when the soldiers would come. If they couldn't tell who was Dominican and who was Haitian, they would hold this sprig of parsley and ask the Haitians to say the word perejil. And you could tell by the way I'm saying it that I would not have survived. The key to it is the way that you roll your R. And because of our own orthograph, it's not possible to, some of us cannot roll the R in the same way. So this speaks to, when I was writing this novel and over the years of research that it took, to the power of the word. You know, in the Bible said in the beginning was the word. And for these people in this massacre, also in the end was the word. Imagine that sort of your last engagement with the world was being unable to say a word. So this is from The Farming of Bones. In the cane season, there was the harvest and the dead season, where sort of the cane was growing and nothing was happening. I'm not advertising this. Just like the gentleman said before, it's not an endorsement. The dead season is for me one never-ending night. I dream all the time of returning to give my testimony to the river, the waterfall, the justices of the peace, even to the Generalissimo himself. A border is a veil that many people can wear. The valley is a daydream, the village and the people, graves that only a broken-hearted person would ever know how to find. I would go back to say Pessi to the Generalissimo, for I would not know how to say it myself. My way of saying it, however badly, would always be perejil. For somewhere in me, I still believe that perhaps one simple word could have saved all our lives. I had never desired to run away. I knew what was happening, but I didn't want to flee. Where to? Who to? Was always in my mind. Of all the people killed, I will bet there were many like me asking, who to? Even when they were dying and the priests were standing over them, reciting ceremonial farewells, they must have been asking themselves, allez en paix, mais qui beau? Go in peace, but where? Heaven. My heaven is the veil of water that stands behind my parents and me. To step across it and then come out of it is what makes me alive. Their never coming out is what makes them dead. I was never blind. I knew that the death of many was coming. I knew that the streams and rivers could run with blood. I knew as well how to say Pessi as to say perejil. You may be surprised what we use our dreams to do, how we drape them over our sight and carry them like amulets to protect us from evil spells. My dreams are now only visitations of my words for the absent justice of the peace or for the Generalissimo himself. He asked for perejil, but there's so much more we all knew how to say. Perhaps one simple word would not have saved our lives. Many more would have to, and many more will. The more days go by, the more I think of these graves. I could no more find these graves than the exact star that exploded and fell from the sky the night each of these people died. The more I think about their graves, the more I see mine, a simple stone marker with written on it my name and only the day I die. But it must be known that I understood. I saw things too. I just thought they wouldn't see me. I just thought they would never find me. Only when the others were taken away did I realize that the river of blood might come to my doorstep, that it had always been in our house, that it is always in all our houses. The poor, it is said, are always despised by their neighbors. I wish now that the dead would show me how many ghosts must trail one person in a lifetime. How many paths must lead us to these graves? I once heard an elder say that the dead who have no use for their words, they leave them as part of their children's inheritance. Proverbs, obscenities, even grunts and moans, once inserted in special places during conversations. All of these are passed along to us, the next heir. I hear the weight of that river all the time. It creaks beneath the voices like a wooden platform under a ton of mountain rocks. The river, it opens up to swallow all those who step in it, men, women, and children alike, as if they had bellies full of stones. It is perhaps the great discomfort of those growing deaf to have voices locked inside their heads, voices that remain the same even as they are growing louder than the clamor of the world outside. This slaughter is the only thing that is mine to pass on. But all I want to do is find a place to lay down now and again, a safe nest where we'll neither be scattered by the winds nor remain forever buried beneath the sod. I just need to lay down sometimes, for my part of it is too heavy for one body, too burdensome for one soul. And so I want to tell everything before I die, even in the rare silence of the night with no faces around. This past is more flesh than air, our stories, these testimonials. His name is Sébastien Onius, and his story is like a fish with no tail, a dress with no hem, a drop with no fall, a body in the sunlight with no shadow. His absence is my shadow, his breath are my dreams. New dreams just seem like a waste sometimes, needless annoyances, too much to crowd into this tiny space that remains. Still, I want to find new ways of filling up my head, new visions for my old life, waterless rivers to cross, and real waterfall caves to slip into 100 times each day. His name is Sébastien Onius, and sometimes that's the only thing I know. My back aches now in all those places he claimed for himself, arches of bare skin that belonged to him, pockets where the flesh remains fragile, seared like unhealed burns, where each fallen scab uncovers a deeper wound. I wish at least that he was part of the air on this side of the river, a tiny morsel in the breeze that passes through my room in the night. I wish at least that some of the dust of his bones could trail me in the wind, that his face would rise out of the dark when I call him in my sleep. Men with names never truly die, they say. It is only the nameless and the faceless who vanish like smoke into the early morning air. His name is Sébastien Onius. 7 years before his own death, he saw his father die. Death to Sébastien Onius was as immense as a tree-tearing beast of a raging hurricane. It was an event that split open the sky and cracked the ground, made the heavens wail and the crowds weep. It was not for one person to go through alone. My dreams say to me, at least he was not alone. Perhaps there was water to greet his last fall, to fold around him and embrace him like a feather-filled mattress. Perhaps there were ceremonial words recited into his ears. Allez avec bon Dieu, go with God, go in peace. A farewell not so solitary and abrupt, a parting like the dimming of twilight, darkening the sky for shadows and stars at play. His name is Sébastien Onius, and his spirit must be inside the waterfall at the source of the stream where the cane workers bathe, the grotto of wet moss and chalk and luminous green fresco, the dark green of wet papaya leaves. I can make myself dream him out of this void to listen. A handsome, still-bodied man, he always carries a knapsack woven from palm leaves as he walks out of the caves into all the rooms where I sleep. Amabel, c'est Sébastien come to see you, he says. I have brought remedies for your wounds. I've brought citronella and cedarwood to keep the ants and mosquitoes from biting your skin. Camphor, basil, and bitter oranges to reduce your fevers and keep your joints limber. I have brought ginger and celery, aniseed and cinnamon for your digestion, turmeric for your teeth, and soursop tea but pleasant dreams. But I will never bring parsley, never again parsley. I sense that we no longer know the same words, no longer speak the same language. There is water, wind, land, and mountains between us, a shroud of silence, a curtain of fate. Dis-moi, Sébastien, tell me, Sébastien, I say, I must know. Did you suffer a great deal? He breathes in more of the cloth dust in my room, as though he wants to inhale me and everything there too. Sébastien, I say, this slaughter showed me that life can be a strange gift. Breath, like glass, they say, is always in danger. I chose a living death because I am not brave. It takes patience, you used to say, to raise a setting sun. Two mountains can never meet, they say, but perhaps you and I, we can meet again. I want to acknowledge two people here, to Ron Daniels. Where's Ron? Is Ron here? Ron Daniels and Nicole Wisfor, who are two people who work very hard for Haiti, and I just want to acknowledge them. Nicole got up earlier, and there she is. Yes. The closing, this is from Brother I'm Dying. And Brother I'm Dying, it's a memoir. It's about death of my father, death of my uncle in immigration jail, and the birth of my daughter. And when my uncle died, silence became a very important issue in terms of what we tell, what we don't tell, and in terms of the exposing a wrong when someone is taken away. And my uncle was 81 years old and was arrested after requesting asylum in Miami and died a few days later in jail. And I was thinking in the middle of this about folktales that I had been told, and this one is about silence. And the moral of it, if you miss it, it is not our way to let grief silence us. So we will end with that and then take your questions. It is not our way to let our grief silence us. Grandma Melina once told a story about a daughter whose father had died. The daughter loved her father so much that her heart was shattered into 100 pieces. When it came time to plan for the jubilant country wake, which was once held the night before all funerals, the daughter wanted no part of it and ordered that it not be held. Tifi, said one of the wise old women in the daughter's village, let the people rejoice at your father's wake tonight before they cry at his funeral tomorrow. There will be no rejoicing, answered the daughter. Why should I ever rejoice again when my father is dead? Tifi, insisted the old woman, let the wake be held. Your father is now in the land beneath the waters. It is not our way to let our grief silence us. Knowing that the old woman had the gift that the ancestors grant to only a chosen few of being able to journey between the living and the dead, the daughter said to the old woman, I will allow the wake to be held only if you go back to the land beneath the waters and bring my father back. The old woman walked to the nearest river and slipped into the waters, and a few hours later she reemerged and walked straight to the daughter's house. Good papa, asked the daughter, where's my father? Tifi, said the old woman, I am back from beneath the waters, deep into the bowels of the earth. There were some wide and narrow roads, and I took them. There were many hills and mountains, and I climbed them. There were hamlets and villages, towns and cities, and I passed through them all, and finally I reached it, the land of the ancestors, the city of the dead. Did you see my father? Asked the daughter impatiently. I saw so many people there, I couldn't even tell you, answered the old woman. I saw my own mother and father, my uncle and grandmother, my aunt who was trampled by a horse, and my sister who died in childhood. All my loved ones who died were there. Well, did you see my father? Shouted the daughter. Tifi, answered the old woman. I looked and I looked amongst all those people, until I found your father." "Where is he?" asked the daughter. "I've come to take you back to the land of the living," I told your father. "Your daughter says she cannot live without you." "What did he say to that?" asked the daughter. "I am so touched that my daughter wants me to come back," he said. "But you know what? My home is now here in the land of the ancestors. Tell my daughter for me that les moun vivant, les moun mouri. When one is alive, one is alive, but when one is dead, one is dead." The old woman then pulled from her pocket a set of false teeth that the father had religiously worn in his mouth when he was still among the living and had taken with him into the land of the dead. "Your father sent this for you," said the old woman, "so that you might believe that I saw him and accept what he says." The daughter took the false teeth in her hands and looked at them with great sadness, but also with a renewed sense of courage. "As my father wishes, it shall be," she said. "We will have the wake to honor him, to rejoice and celebrate him before his body is put in the ground. We will eat, we will sing, we will dance, and always, always, we will tell our stories. But most importantly, we will speak of our dead, for it is not our way to let our grief silence us." Thank you very much. I want to plug, I know Mark Schuler's had a showing of the Potomitan, the documentary on Haitian women here, and it's a wonderful documentary. I'm not saying because I've participated a little bit, but it's a wonderful documentary.
Thank you, Sister Danticat. Much respect to you for the work that you do. We're so pleased to have you here. There are a lot of teachers and students in the room, and I know one of the most difficult discussions we have in the classroom is just about the relationship between literature and emancipation in both a political and a human sense. I know it's a very, very large question, but I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on what you think that relationship is, both in general and maybe with respect to your work. To what extent do you see your work playing a role in the liberation of Haiti and resisting the crimes that have been done to that people?
I think, writers, well, I'm not going to generalize, but it's hard to set such a gigantic, ginormous, really goal for one's work. What I always hope when people read, if they read something of mine, I always hope that they'll go and seek other things, like that they'll read more, and I think emancipation, whether through literature or any other way, begins with individuals. For every Toussaint Louverture or others that we had, you had thousands who decided that they wanted to be free. And literature, I think, is modest in that sense, because we have a particular challenge with written literature in Haiti, is that probably, that the sad thing is that the majority of people in Haiti are not able to read an entire book, whether through economics or the lack of literacy. So if a writer had said, my work is going to liberate Haiti, I think that's naive. I mean, if anything, one hopes that something inspires, and you inspire some people who then who try to hope to bring about change. But I think that's just that's a huge goal. I mean, I think perhaps inspiration more, towards emancipation is even that is huge, but it's still something on that path.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. As a fellow writer in Haitian, I got to say that you are without a doubt probably my greatest influence, and always a proud to be here to see you. My question is, when noticing the characters within your texts, one thing that I've noticed is the emotional strength and the emotional detail that is taken into those characters. When writing them, do you ever allow the audience or your readers to dictate a direction in which your characters are going to act and how they're represented, or do you use, I guess, yourself as the writer dictate more so than allowing an audience to dictate, or maybe taking the audience or the reader's perspective in mind?
It's a very good question. The question of audience. I mean, I think it's similar to the last question in the sense that if you anticipate audience, it just doesn't quite work in that there are people reading you sometimes who you never knew were part of your audience. I mean, it's a cliche. A lot of writers say, the first audience is yourself. I try to write things that I would like to read. And then, because you can, if you try to be formulaic and you're like, oh, I want, this group will like it. I mean, you would always aim wrong. I think the best advice, in terms of audience, you think first of an audience of one, and write what you love writing, what you love reading. If not, then you're sort of guessing, and you may not always guess right. And I think it's to write the truest thing that, it's important to just write the truest thing that you know. Because also if you're writing a novel, you can spend 5-10 years writing a novel, and if your audience has already gone to college, or if they were, based on, they're shifting around you. So I think that's a false aim.
Good evening. I've been following your work since my literary group out here in Queens decided to read Crick Crack. And so I'm just delighted that you made the journey out this way. And I guess I wanted to ask, as I listened to you talk tonight, I wanted to know more about the writers who nourish your writing and the things you read. I hear phrases like 100 years moving through some of your books. So I just wanted you to be able to talk about your process and to discuss some of the writings that you follow.
Thank you very much. In terms of process, I mean, it's hard. Writers are sometimes like nervous about, we sort of like, we don't understand it basically. That's like the hammer, the process. Sometimes you're not sure where it comes from. But influences, of strong influence, I always say it's for me, it's storytelling. Because I was told stories when I was a kid. I think that had a very powerful impact on me, and sort of the idea of wanting to shape things, and I don't think there's nothing greater that can be said for the power of storytelling, especially to little children. I try, with my oldest daughter who's 4, we have 2 categories of stories you read in a book, stories that are not in a book. So it's just like the idea of being told a story, and the malleability of stories when they were told. I think that had a very strong impact on me. This fall, just now was published a book called Love, Anger, and Madness, which was in French, Amour, Colère, Folie, by really the premier Haitian female novelist, Marie-Vieux Chauvet, who is just an extraordinary writer. This book was, everybody should go get this book, Love, Anger, and Madness. It's on Amazon.com. You can do that for other people's books, but it's tacky if you do that. But this woman was such a powerful writer that, and this book was published during the Duvalier dictatorship, and they had to halt the publication in France because her family was in danger because of the book. And this is a very powerful book. She's written other books, but this is the first of hers that is translated, is circulating. She has another one in English called Dance on the Volcano. But she was a very strong influence for me. Writers like Toni Morrison, and just a whole bunch of writers, the influence. But I all writers are sort of like literary. With like leeches, and it changes to the influence. But I think the most powerful influence, though, is storytelling. Okay, it is a lot of questions, but that's fine. The Dew Breaker. I hope I remember. Yes, I know. I'm very fortunate to have some relationship with a lot of the writers who are writing now in Haiti, like Evelyn Touillot. I know Franck Etienne, Daniela Ferrière, who's writing in Canada, and Marie Agnès Tunian, others, Yannick Lyons, and others who are writing now. I'm fortunate to be, in touch with them, and there's a little more movement and sort of in their translation of their works that I'm very, very excited about. The structure of the Dewbreaker, and some of you if you've read the Dewbreaker, it's like they call it like a novel in stories, but it's 9 separate stories that center around a man who is a Chouquet Laozi, who's like a Dewbreaker, a torturer in Haiti in the 1960s, and it's broken into all these different. It's about his family. There's some chapters about his family and then about his victims, and there's one story in there called The Funeral Singer, and I'd always there's sometimes I like writing, sort of importing certain things into this Haitian setting, and for a lot of people who are Haitian, they're like, oh, I've never heard of this, and they get mad, but it's like, it's fiction, I can do that. But with the funeral singer, it's something like that. It's a woman who, her job is really to go sing at funerals. That's what she does. She goes to all these funerals, and they hire her to sing at funerals. And she doesn't quite fit in there, but she could. That's the thing people ask that question more than any other about that book. What is the funeral singer doing in that book? But I just liked her, and I needed a place for her, and there she is. Yeah. And the movie. Okay, this the Dewbreaker was briefly optioned by HBO. We went through a whole process thing, and then that fell through. But we had like a couple of scripts for a while.
I wanted to know of all your works, which one is your own favorite of everything you've ever written?
Oh, of all my works, which one is my favorite?
Yeah.
Writers say this all the time. It's true. They're like children. You don't really have favorites. But I always say, the favorite is. But what often feels like the favorite is the one you're doing at the moment. Because it's the one that you can most do something about. So I don't really have a favorite. But I guess, yeah, maybe I have. It's like the parents say, I don't have a favorite, but Brother, I'm Dying, I guess, is out of those would be my favorite, just because it's so personal. It's about my family. It's sort of like a document for my family. So I guess that one. Yeah. I do have a favorite. Oh, okay.
And every parent does.
Yeah. And he says, and every parent does.
I have one, because you were just talking about your favorite child. How was the process of writing your first work of autobiography? How did that differ from your work of historical fiction? When you do your research process, how did that? Many of my students were wondering about the process of tracking back and forth between history and between autobiography. So how did that, and how did that process work for you?
That was an exceptional process in the sense that it's, people used to ask me if my fiction was therapeutic, but this was so totally therapeutic, and it was so clearly, it was just, for me, so clearly something that I needed to do, that it was almost like not a book. But what was different with that in fiction, though, is that all of a sudden with these things you have to check so much, because memory is tricky. You have to make sure things line up with the time. So there was a second layer of writing to it in terms of research, which I kind of now enjoy in the nonfiction, because when things line up or when it fits and it makes sense, you get so excited. I get a sort of a feeling of the historian's excitement in it, but it was so much, for me, so much more than a book, because I had done one nonfiction book, After the Dance, which is a book on Carnival, where I had sort of a more journalistic, a little bit of personal, but a lot of journalistic. But this one just felt like such a birthing. Like when the book was published, I just almost didn't remember how it was written, which was strange, because that had never happened before.
My question is asking you to put yourself in the role of a mentor of students or a professor giving advice. if you had to identify 2 or 3 things that a group of young potential writers, wannabe writers, you would say to them as things you should follow, things you should do, or things you should not do, what would those couple of things be as Edwidge, the mentor, speaking to students?
Okay. What you should do. The first thing you should do is read. Just read cereal boxes, newspapers, everything. Every writer I know is like a voracious reader. Reading is so important. It's like it's because that's the model. That's, you're not copying, but even, people who've written 100 books, if they're stuck in a kind of method, they're like, how do I do time again? They'll go read somewhere. I think reading is so crucial in terms of, just that, observing and things around you, or keeping a journal, all of these things. But also, you can also bring it to life in general. I think you need, if you are to do anything, including anything in the arts, it's empathy. That ability to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and that's very, just to imagine a different world, imagine different things. That's very important. So, reading and and observing and taking advice. I mean, probably for writers, a lot of the people don't think that, like, even I or anybody else, like, if you submit something, there's always a revision process, and this is maybe in the university setting that can help you. There's always, if somebody says, oh, make some suggestion, it doesn't mean that they're disrespecting you. I think that's hard in college too. So because it all comes, sometimes too in college, it so comes down to being graded that you can overlook the value of things that are suggested to you. But just being able to take criticism, we in writing class we call it critique, to just being able to accept feedback, and but reading. If you read enough, you can teach yourself your own class, But that you still have to come to your college, though. So I'm not quoted as saying you don't have to be autodidact necessarily.
As a professor of York College, I wanted to say thank you for the first thing she said, which was read. So just a plug to our students.
First of all, I want to thank you because with all your works, you really show a different side of Haitians. Because when I read your stuff, I can see that you really tell people how me, as a Haitian living in another country, I feel and what I'm going through. And my question is, if you have like a couple of words, like some words of encouragement for people like me, like us, of what we can do, like with all this history that we're carrying on our back.
Thank you very much for that. And when I said earlier that I was writing, that that with the question of audience, I'm always writing for this girl I was when I came here at 12, and saw certain images of myself portrayed, like Mark was saying, all the negativity that I knew in my heart, and that that my life was telling me, that my parents were telling me that weren't true about myself. So I wanted to write for that girl. And so my advice to you is that at core, I think we just have to know who you are. It's again the question of emancipation. Sort of own. We do have. It's become so cliched to us, almost like we do have this extraordinary history. Own it. You own the strength of that. You own the strength of your person. You own the strength of your community. And if you think, even when I was younger, I knew this. If you think that to all that we've been able to do, given all the obstacles, that's worth you're holding your head up. And so to always own that and remember that, I think, is crucial. And if you have that, then the negativity can swirl around you, but you don't have to own that. You know, that's the best I can say to you. And with the history, you know, if you're a poet, if you're a playwright, you do whatever in your way, you can reflect in whatever you do your own interpretation of this. But the most important thing is to, you know, is to not to define yourself, because every individual is, you know, has their own gift outside of all of that. But if that's something that's important to you, to just like to own, just remember the strength of that's brought you here and own that. Like Maya Angelou always says, you know, we all, you know, we've all been paid for, you know, and you know, so many people have done so much to make you, to put you here, that your debt has been paid, and your obligation is to go forward, it's to own that and go forward.
I guess that's a great time. Thank you very, very much for all the work you do for Haiti, for the work you do for Haitian women, and for women writers in general, and just for your time here at York College. Could we have another round for Edwidge? We have, I'm not going to steal the fire, but we have a tradition at York College that I'm going to let the provost explain.
Give Mark a round of applause. Give Edwidge a round of applause. Is that all you can do? Better than that. Come on, let's give her a round of applause that is deserving of her presence. Edwidge, we are delighted that you were able to be part of, let me just come on the other side, if you don't mind. We're delighted that you were able to take time and be part of our engaging with self and community, learning, listening, moving, being inspired. We like, as part of what we do, to capture the moment of the visitor's visit, and we have a poster that for your visit does this. We're going to send you the framed, you're so special it took a while to get your framed one done. We should get it tomorrow, and I'm going to ask Mark to get it to you. But I just wanted, on behalf of our faculty and students and staff at your college, to say that this for us represents a small memento of your being here and living and learning with us.